All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm really interested in this one. In fact, oddly enough, even though we're talking about AI, which is a relatively, I won't say it's a recent development, it's just that it's achieved mass popularity or awareness relatively recently. So even though it's relatively new on the large scale, awareness, this particular question or a variation on it is something I have personally been asking myself and curious about since around 1983. So very, very interested in talking to you today about it. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. This is the workshop. I'm Erik Gross. I'll be your presenter today. I'm a senior level software developer, all around technologist and nerd. I spent 6 years in the Navy, operating nuclear reactors and fixing complex electronic equipment and traveling around the world. That part of it was pretty cool. I'm the co-founder of the Tech Academy, a software development bootcamp. More on that in a moment, but that's me. And we've got to change this picture. There's a little more gray and I have less hair. Not because I'm balding, only because I cut it short. We have an assistant in the chat, Regina, who many of you who are regular attendees of our class will have met, and she's there to monitor the chat, answer questions. Please be nice. If you're not a nice person, Regina will just boot you. And that's it. But I'm not really too worried about that. So I think I know most people here, but I just want to give anybody a chance. If you have not yet attended any of our classes, or if you haven't attended in a long time, hop into chat and just let us know where you're joining us from. And if it's still cold where you are and you want to be mad at me for talking about how warm it was in Louisiana, that's fine too. Hi, Corey. I'm glad to see you. All right. Feel free to use the chat. Like I said, Regina will be monitoring it. And let's go ahead and get moving. So here's the agenda. We'll have a short explanation of the Tech Academy, what we're all about. We'll have our workshop. Again, really passionate about this, really excited, and I hope it'll help you to form your own viewpoint. We'll have a brief Q&A session. We'll give you some information about our boot camps. There's a free gift at the end. Stick around. And the whole class will be about an hour, hour and a half. So, the Tech Academy. Who are we and what do we do? Well, we deliver coding boot camps. And coding boot camps, it's actually kind of cool. Like 10 years gone, we can say coding boot camps, and most people have a rough idea what we're talking about. Let me tell you, when we started 10 years ago, very few people knew what we're talking about. A coding bootcamp is an intensive technology certification program. It's designed to prepare people for entry-level positions in the tech industry. Typically, they last 3 to 6 months, and they focus on like modern skills, practical things that people need on the job. Well, we've been offering thorough, budget-friendly, flexible, and trusted coding bootcamps, like I said, for over a decade. Our programs are cost-effective, they're self-paced, they're online coding bootcamps, and they're tailored for beginners with no prior technical or coding knowledge, which is kind of cool. The certification programs thoroughly cover in-demand skills for the tech industry. They're endorsed by stellar online reviews. And this is a really big aspect of why we do so well. They're designed to fit around your personal schedule to prepare you for your tech career with a really well-rounded toolkit. The average cost of boot camps in the nation, in America, is $13,500. Ours are under the national average, and we even have boot camps that start at $5,300. And I want to read our mission statement because, again, this is actually why we do these free classes, is this mission statement. The mission statement of the Tech Academy is to graduate entry-level technology professionals that excel in the basics of their field and thereafter have successful careers in the tech industry and whose actions raise industry standards and surpass client expectations. Our product is you working in tech. I'm also really happy and excited to announce our new service. Just 2 weeks old, maybe 2.5 weeks old. It is the Tech Academy Accelerator. It's a monthly subscription program. It includes live weekly workshops with me, over 100 educational videos, over 100 self-paced online mini classes. Now, this is different than anything else we do. In these workshops, we do a very deep dive into complex technical subjects. There's a lot of Q&A included as I go through the workshop. It's open chat and voice. It's a dialogue back and forth. And the topics we cover are topics suggested by the community. And there is a community there, a rapidly growing group of, we call them accelerators, that are interested in accelerating their technology career. And they come from complete beginners to people that are already working in the industry. So what does this cost? It's unbelievably cheap. It's $9.99 a month. You can try it out with the first 7 days free. Regina just dropped a link in the chat. If you want to check out the accelerator, I encourage you to click on that link, fill out the form. It'll confirm your email, and it'll have you enter a card number, but you don't get charged for a week because, again, you get a 7-day trial. I highly recommend you look at this thing. If you're interested in advancing your tech career, this is the place where I can just data dump on all the things I've worked so hard to learn over decades, especially about helping people in those pivotal first few years of their career. And I absolutely love it. It's a great community, and it's a lot of fun to be part of. So I'll pause for a second to take a sip of water and let anybody who wants to apply to that do so. Yeah, in fact, this last one that we did yesterday, I got to talk about something that I've never taught publicly before. The subject was how to become an idea factory, how to learn a reliable framework that will allow you to create ideas on demand. I've never been able to teach this, and I got a chance to yesterday. It's a blast. Love to see you all there. All right, now, proper class expectations. I'm pretty quick on this. What you'll expect to see here is simple definitions for technical terms, explaining technology-related concepts in plain English. This class does not have any coding. If you're interested in free coding classes, we do those every week. And in fact, you can register for the next coding class on Meetup. Regina, if you could drop a link into the chat for our next free coding class, I'd really appreciate it. There you go. And they're fun. If you haven't attended one of them, you get your hands dirty, build some code, but more importantly, you learn the fundamental aspects of any computer program. So whatever, programming language you're trying to study, if you're interested in learning to code, armed with the data that we teach in those free coding classes, your study of the language you're interested in learning will absolutely get better. All right. Let's answer a question. Will AI replace tech workers? Now, I don't know this to be true, but I'm assuming that some of you, maybe even most of you, are probably going to assume that I'll say no. It would be pretty easy to think, well, Erik's biased. He runs a coding boot camp. Of course, he's going to say no. AI is not going to replace tech workers. Instead of forcing you to accept my opinion on it, what I'm going to do is just provide you with data so you can make your own decision. Yes, I absolutely have a point of view. We all have points of view about lots of things, but that's not what I'm going to try to do here tonight. I just want to give you data. And then you go from there. Now, a pretty cool thing to look into is the fact that the fear of automation has actually existed for centuries. It all started with the Industrial Revolution. If you're not familiar with the term, most of us are. The Industrial Revolution was a period of major technology advancement. It took place in the late 1700s into the early 1800s. And what happened here was we were fundamentally changing manufacturing processes from handmade to the use of machines in factories. And there were, because of this, significant shifts in culture, in the economy, in society. In general, this started in Great Britain, and it spread rapidly to other parts of the world, and it dramatically increased the production capabilities of manufacturing areas and dramatically increased living standards. However, there was a lot of fear surrounding the Industrial Revolution. During this period, people were worried about losing their jobs to machines and not liking the kind of work there was in factories because it seemed to treat them more like parts of a machine than as human beings. Also, and this was a major shift in society, as more people moved to cities for these factory jobs, these places became really crowded and dirty. leading to illness, sickness, disease, making people feel unsafe and unstable. Another major factor to look at is that during this period, the media spread a lot of fear. Remember, the printing press had been invented barely 150 years before, and there'd been enough development in that area that printed media, i.e. newspapers, circulars, were in broad circulation in some of the major population centers of the world. And so the media was there in full force. Countless articles were written during this time about machines replacing people. A lot of them are in the historical record, and you can go back and look at this stuff. But the big thing was that the advancements that were happening in machinery and automation caused people to fear replacement. There were a bunch of technological advancements happening, and each one, they happened in rapid order. Each one caused panic and fear because workers thought they would be outmoded. Let's go over an example. In fact, we'll go over 3 major examples from the Industrial Revolution. The first one is the steam engine. Now, a steam engine is a machine that uses steam to make things move, such as trains and machines in factories. As an aside, this happens to be an area that I know decently well because in the Navy, when you're a nuclear reactor operator, yes, you have a nuclear reactor, but you know the sole purpose? This is really wild. A lot of people don't know this. The sole purpose of that nuclear reactor is to make steam. That's actually all it's there for. It's pretty miraculous. The nuclear reactor is there, and there's a controlled nuclear reaction happening inside this very tightly guarded and strong container. And because there's a nuclear reaction happening in there, it's generating a tremendous amount of heat, 400 or 500 degrees worth of heat. And so if you take water and push it through there, and if it's highly pressurized water, it won't boil away to steam, but you can use that super hot water. And if you make it pass by regular water at regular air pressure, boom, that regular water turns into steam. And you can use the steam to do anything, and we did. The steam is what turned the screw that moved you through the water. The steam is what we used for a generator to create electricity. We even used the steam to clean seawater so you could have fresh water to drink or to bathe or to cook with. So steam is amazing. But let's go back from the early 1990s when Erik was in the Navy and look at the early part of the 1800s. Steam engine technology was in its infancy, but even at the beginning, it made a tremendous impact in society. For the first time, you could store energy inside a small volume, a small space. And that energy could be used to create a tremendous amount of what they call motive force. All that means is if you let that steam out of its container in a very small hole that's directed, it will cause air to push very hard in one direction. And now you can apply that energy, that air that's coming out, to do all kinds of things, to turn propellers, to turn crankshafts, to turn gears. In other words, to drive all of this machinery that the Industrial Revolution was using so much of. So during the Industrial Revolution, there was tremendous concern that the introduction of these steam engines, because they enabled machines to perform work that was previously done by human beings, by skilled laborers, would not only eliminate countless jobs, but also lessen human craftsmanship and disrupt the traditional ways of life. There was legitimately a lot of fear. There were riots surrounding this. Factories were burned down. Business owners were killed. It was a whole deal. Here's another one. This is a device, you see it on the left, called a cotton gin. Now, despite the fact that gin is an alcohol, gin here absolutely does not have anything to do with alcohol. I've looked into the history here. It's kind of fascinating. Most people think that it's a shortened version of the word engine. But a cotton gin is a tool that quickly separates raw cotton that's just been picked from a field from its seeds. Because the seeds stop the cotton from being very usable. But if you strip out the seeds, then the cotton's a lot easier to use in making clothes and lots of other products. So when the cotton gin was created, and you can see this one's being operated, watch them turn it manually, but steam power came along and made it so they could be operated without a human being attached. There was a big worry that it would significantly reduce the demand for manual labor and leave farmhands without jobs. Here's another one. It's called a power loom. A loom is just a machine that makes cloth. That's all a loom is, right? Oddly enough, looms are extremely important in the development of the modern computer. But that's a whole nother story. And if you want to hear the true story behind that, then get our book, You Are Not Stupid. It's fascinating, and it'll help you be a technologist. So this power loom is a machine that weaves cloth very quickly, so it can make lots of fabric fast. Well, as you can imagine, there was a huge fear of replacement. The common fear surrounding the introduction of the power loom was it's going to replace skilled manual weavers with machines, and that would lead to widespread unemployment and economic hardship for textile workers. Textiles are forms of like woven material. So this was, again, huge, huge fear. And there were, in fact, riots surrounding this. Not everybody knows this, but this fear continued about 150 years later with the first computers. When computers first came about in the 1940s, people started worrying that these machines might take over jobs that require mathematics or data work. There was a big concern growing among people that computers might take over tasks like financial records, complex calculations in engineering and science, and potentially that would make skilled professionals in these fields feel redundant or undervalued. This was a point of big discussion in the early decades of the computer revolution. And again, when these computers in the first few decades were all used by big business, universities, the military, but in the late 70s, early 80s, now the personal computer revolution came along. And with the release of personal computers, now individuals were worried about their job loss because of automation in sectors like data entry and accounting, and even manufacturing and assembly line jobs, because these computers were small enough, you could put them in an assembly line and help control aspects of the assembly line. And here's, of course, because of my age, where I start to have some of my own personal perspective. Don't have any perspective on what happened in the 1800s, even though my kids tell me I'm really old. Don't even go back to the 1940s. Thank you very much. However, I was here when the Apple came out. And I was there when my dad walked in the front door. This is like Erik's origin story, right? My dad walked in the door in 1981 and he had a VIC-20 in his hand, which comes from a manufacturer in Canada called Commodore. And it was the first consumer computer to sell more than 1 million units. It was a massive success. Anyway, here's the thing. I got into computers very early, personal computers, right? I've told this story a little bit. And again, this is just one person's point of view. But this is what I saw. What I saw was that I was reading a newspaper article in about 1984. And I remember it was 1984 because that summer, I went down to a college, a pre-college program in Oakland. And it was the year the Olympics happened, right? And it was right before I was going to go down to Oakland and do this program. And I'm reading the San Francisco Chronicle, and I see an article about a recent development at, I think it was Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley, about the creation of really sophisticated computer programs that could themselves generate computer code. So that's one thing I want you to notice. One of the more common things that people in the technology industry are using ChatGPT for, myself included, is to create code. Well, let me tell you, although we used a completely different methodology, that's been around since the early 80s. And not surprisingly, this article was all about how that spelled the death of professional software developer jobs. I was a kid. I worked at a grocery store. I wasn't too worried about it, but it stuck with me. So let's move forward. In the 1980s, this is when a legitimate fear of AI literally replacing humans started. On the left, you see one of the very early uses of AI in trying to pit AI programs against grandmasters in chess. It's just one of the major tests that tells a neat story in the media. It also legitimately tests certain aspects of an artificial intelligence. And so there would start to be a worry like, wait a minute, I work in technology. Is this emerging artificial intelligence thing going to automate some tasks that traditionally people in software development or data analysis or computer programming would do? And so people were worried about job displacement in the 1980s. It's kind of interesting. As a career, software developer was still in its infancy, and already people were worried about it going away. All right. There are other sources that have made it so this idea about artificial intelligence or AI being dangerous to society in some way, where that's come from. Some of the earliest science fiction stories. I am a tremendous student of science fiction. It's gonna be a shock to people that I'm a sci-fi nerd. I know you're all utterly surprised, right? But some of the earliest sci-fi stories were about artificial intelligence destroying humanity, and they can trace back to the early to mid 20th century. One of the most notable is a story, or really a play, called, this is the letters R, U, and R. It stands for Rossum's Universal Robots. And it was a play written by the Czech writer Karel Čapek. This is a long time ago. This is 1920. And it introduced the term robot to the world. It depicted a dystopian future where artificial beings created to serve humans rebelled against their creators. And it ultimately led to the downfall of humanity. Now, that particular story has been repeated over and over and over and over and over again for decades in some really, really cool movies, including, say, the Terminator in the 1980s. Even though it was popular entertainment, this idea has just only grown in popular culture. How many times in your own life have you heard references to Skynet? In fact, it was news when we passed the day named in that movie way back when the Skynet actually attacked and took over. That made the news from a movie made 30 years before, right? So there are many, many, many other examples that popular culture depicts this idea that AI will become, one, super sophisticated, and two, this is really critical, able to act under its own volition. In other words, it would have an awareness, an actual life to it. This is a long-term story. Now, the fact is, it will never happen. There is no life in a computer. That's a discussion for another day. Now, let's look at a whole different industry where there has been fear about technology advancement for decades, and it's bookkeeping. What's bookkeeping? It's a profession of recording financial transactions and maintaining accurate financial records for an organization or for an individual. Now, let me tell you, you think computers are good at recording transactions that have occurred and doing math and keeping records? Absolutely, they are. So this is a similar example to the fear of artificial intelligence. For decades, and this goes way back before the popularity of ChatGPT and all the other things that have popped up in the last year or so, okay? For decades, there's been a fear that technology would render bookkeepers obsolete. I saw this back in the early 90s. Look what actually happened. Instead of bookkeepers disappearing as a career, it's still a completely viable career, and they learned to use and leverage new technologies that came out. Why? Because there's always going to be a need for people who can, one, create bookkeeping software and artificial intelligence, and two, use the software and artificial intelligence. Those advancements will never make bookkeepers obsolete. What they will do, these advancements will require bookkeepers to keep abreast of changes. And those who don't will be left behind. Not because the computer is doing their job, but because the way the job is done by human beings changed, and for whatever reason, they didn't keep up. Here's my point. And look, I've not always been good at this in my life. I'll just full disclosure. It's too easy to focus on the negative. And it actually takes discipline to put attention on positivity. We live in an increasingly cynical world. Again, that's a discussion for another day. I can, with great confidence, say that the media is notorious for negativities. Studies have found that approximately 90% of all media news is negative. As an aside, I years ago decided to never, ever, ever use any browser from Microsoft. I happen to love Microsoft, by the way. I love their technologies. I love Windows. I have no problem with the company. Here's the specific reason why. For many years, every browser from Microsoft has as its default homepage MSN, this news network. And I'm telling you, like every single time I've gotten a new computer and I've had to use either, I even forgot the name, Windows Explorer, Explorer, right? And now it's Bing or Flapjack or whatever they're calling it recently. Literally every single time I've gotten a new computer and I've had to use Internet Explorer, the headlines were death, betrayal, greed, fraud. It was just horrifying. I'm like, ew, I don't want it, right? So this is a very real thing. The media concentrates on negativities all the time. And all I have to say is this: worrying about something that has not happened is a waste of time. That's my personal point of view. Now we're getting into a little personal point of view. It's literally never happened in the past. Starting from the beginning of the 1800s to now, no technological advancement has legitimately resulted in people not being able to have meaningful, great jobs in the area they want to work in. If you were a weaver, you could still make wonderful weaving designs. And if you were willing to figure out how a power loom worked, you could actually have your wonderful design that you put so much creativity into go around the world in great volumes. Or you can focus on the negative and say, oh, no, I'm not going to be able to compete with that, or it's going to do it faster than I could, or I don't want to learn that, or it's difficult to understand. That was an individual choice. So let's look specifically at the technology industry outlook. This is specific data. Back in 2013, when Jack and I were designing the Tech Academy, one of the things we're really interested in is, okay, all right, what's the actual demand for a service like this to break into technology? Because we knew there were people going to, university programs, which was really all there was back then, university and college computer science programs and related programs. That's all there was. It was the only route into tech other than self-study. So we knew people were doing this. We wondered, okay, are there that many jobs that providing yet another way to break into tech is actually viable? Because if it wasn't, if the available way of producing technology professionals was adequate for the demand, why go through it to build a boot camp? If the output from universities can handle it all, that would be kind of stupid on our part. So we looked at the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, which is United States Department. I think it's in Department of Health and Human Services. I forget exactly where it is. It's been moved around a little bit over the decades. And every 5 years, they publish massive reports that they do deep data analysis based on data collection across the country. The short version is this. In 2013, when we were looking at this, they projected that between 2013 and 2023, which seemed infinitely far away then and is now last year, but they projected that in that time period, that the technology industry would need approximately 1.3 million jobs. And they said that the available production of technology workers was at that time in 2013, 40,000 technology workers a year. Times 10 years is 400,000 technology workers, which leaves us short by 900,000 workers. Oh, interesting. Well, we had a really interesting experience happen 5 years later, because they do this report every 5 years. So in 2018, we got to look at the same data. But what had changed in that intervening 5 years is, one, boot camps had become a viable, respected, and accepted way to break into the industry. From being absolute like nothing in 2012, tiny and new in 2013, all the way to 2018, they were working. The boot camps in America were producing 35 to 40,000 graduates a year going into technology, taken as an aggregate. In other words, in 5 years, the production level of that methodology to get into technology had matched what universities were doing 5 years before. But also, what was really cool is that universities had increased their production to 60,000 people a year. So now we're sitting here going, okay, 60, we're almost 100,000 people a year popping out of these programs to go into technology. Well, what did the Bureau of Labor and Statistics have to say about it? We project that from 2018 to 2028, we'll need 1.4 million technology jobs. Oh, well, it looks like we're outputting between 80 and 100,000 a year now, times 10, 800,000 to a million. We're upside down by 400 to 600,000 jobs over the next decade. Here's the point is, we haven't even caught up with the existing need for the technology industry, and people are saying there's a danger of the profession going away. It just legitimately does not compute. It doesn't make any sense. And by the way, it's 2023. They haven't released their report where we just passed 2023. I just went and looked. I haven't seen it hit the news yet, but I went and looked at it about 3 months ago, right after we broke into the new year. What does the Bureau of Labor and Statistics have to say about this? The numbers haven't changed. We're still about 80 to 100,000 people a year popping into the industry. And we're still at about, over the next decade, it's still more than 1 million people they need to add because it just keeps growing. So it isn't that AI isn't going to have an impact. It 1,000% will and already has had an impact on our jobs. But that's what the outlook looks like. So another thing I want to point out is that artificial intelligence can make errors. It's not perfect. It can make mistakes. I want to explain this little sentence that is in ChatGPT. Maybe you noticed it when you're using ChatGPT. Maybe you haven't, but look at that. ChatGPT can make mistakes. Consider checking important information. Now, for those of you who have not gone through the training we did about a month ago on ChatGPT basics, I'll cover a tiny little thing here right now. This artificial intelligence tool called ChatGPT was trained on billions and billions and billions of examples of human conversation from across the internet. All the text data that it could get fed, it was fed. But it was fed specifically to simply understand the structure of sentences and the relative importance of each element of a sentence and the relationship of those pieces to one another. That's what it was trained on. It was trained on patterns. At its core, ChatGPT, it's not the only artificial intelligence tool, but it's the one that's most popular and the one that most people are looking at in terms of creating code and making it so our jobs might go away. At its core, all ChatGPT does is predict the next most probable word that it should give you. Now, it does it really fast, and it can spit out a lot of text really fast, but it's not trying to understand anything and explain how something works. It's just simply saying, I've been trained on billions of pieces of data, and based on what you gave me in terms of text, I can predict what the next most logical text is that you should get. That's all it actually does. So, real important point here. The data that it's giving you, and this is really critical, it's not data. And I want to clarify. You could ask ChatGPT, give me the average rainfall amounts in the Serengeti over the last decade. And it'll list out a chart. And yes, those numbers are data. But what's really important to realize is to the AI, to ChatGPT, it has not given you any data about the rainfall in the Sahara or Serengeti, I'm sorry, because the AI has no faintest clue what the Serengeti is. It doesn't understand what rainfall is. Try to do math with an AI and you'll realize it doesn't even know what the number 27 or 35 is. It just predicted, based on all of the data the text had been trained on, that these might be the most logical pieces of text to lay out for you. That's all it did. And that difference is crucial in both using artificial intelligence tools that create content. It's crucial in using them, but also critical in figuring out to what degree they're going to have an impact on your job. So there's that. So you should always check important information. It's not giving you data. It's just giving you the next most logical piece of text. Finally, user error can contribute to the mistakes. These AI tools have all been trained on huge amounts of data, but they are designed to let you ask it or direct it to do almost anything. If you direct it in a poor fashion or give it data to work with in conjunction with the data it's already been trained on, if that data you're giving it is flawed, it'll probably give you flawed output. So user error can contribute to an artificial intelligence tool making a mistake, in quote. And this part is critical. Now let's talk about technology specifically. If you'll accept that the output of an AI, let's talk ChatGPT right now, because there's lots of AIs that generate content, but let's just do ChatGPT. If you know that the output of ChatGPT is not in fact created with any great understanding of, the content's context, if you will, right? If you know that it's just a logical projection or prediction of what words should follow what words, then you absolutely should be checking out and verifying what it spits out, right? Well, let's talk about that in relationship to code, because that's one of the biggest fears is AI can generate full-blown computer programs for us that totally replace the idea that a computer program would even be needed. Why would you need a developer when I can just enter in a really, decently crafted prompt to an AI and it spits out a full computer program? Say goodbye to your job. Here's the point. We know it's a given that you must evaluate its output. You cannot just trust it because it wasn't created by a programmer. And this is important. Remember that story I told about the early 1980s is they had developed computer programs that were capable of creating computer programs? That's not what ChatGPT does. It is not creating a computer program. It is creating text content that, given the huge amount of data it was trained on and given a specific request from you, looks like a computer program and, quite frankly, is pretty decent. And you could take it and turn it into a computer program. But ChatGPT isn't programmed to create programs. It's just designed to create collections of text. So the ability to write code is necessary if you're going to properly evaluate any code that's generated by an AI. And I want to say that again. It's a super important thing. The ability to actually write code, to be a human being who is trained in and experienced in writing code, is completely necessary to properly evaluate any code generated by an AI. Super important. Now, we could talk about that for a long time. We do countless examples of, tell ChatGPT to make its programs, and we can dig into it and all that kind of stuff. But that's just the truth. In order to actually effectively, look at what it spit out and be able to say any kind of opinion of any merit, you've got to know how to code. So, by the way, students learn to create and control this whole process of using an AI on our AI bootcamp. So not the effect of it. They learn to program and they learn to use AI. It's pretty cool. And so here's like the big thing I'd ask you to look at. Because again, I don't want you to accept any of this data just without inspecting it for yourself. No one should learn that way. You don't just blindly accept data, right? You inspect it for yourself. I just want to summarize though by saying this. Throughout history, advancements have caused fear. Since the beginning of time, there were those who were afraid of new technology, but we're still here and technology will continue to advance. The best way that I've found to advance with technology is to understand the foundations underneath technology. This was a very calculated decision that Jack and I made over 10 years ago. We knew that at that time, the approach we were going to take with our boot camps, no one else was taking. Every boot camp we'd seen, there were maybe a dozen of them in America at that point. We were very early, right? Every one of them took this approach of, okay, let's pick a computer programming language that we're experts in, and we're going to teach that language. And so when you would sign up and start, what you would do on day one is start programming in that language. And we were fundamentally opposed to that approach, specifically because we'd seen this exact thing. I just spent a half an hour, 45 minutes showing you. We had seen that over and over and over and over again, the technology will continue to advance and that you must understand the principles behind it and learn how to leverage it properly, or it will take you over. And we did not want that for any of our students. The best way to understand technology is to understand the foundations underneath it. And that's why students learn the basics on our boot camps. This is not just meant to be some like, hey, our boot camps are awesome. The lesson I learned over 40 years is why we make them that way. The last thing I want for any graduate is this. They learn a technology that happens to be popular at the time they went through a boot camp, and they get out and they get a job in that exact technology. And then 3 years later, that technology is no longer popular and no one's hiring for it. And this is not a made up scenario. We actually saw it happen in Portland. I've seen it happen in aggregate through the whole industry. But in Portland, there was a boot camp that was teaching a specific technology that was super hot with a lot of the technology startups and companies in Portland. And they were pumping out graduates, and the graduates were getting jobs. And then 2 years later, no one wanted to use that technology anymore. It wasn't popular anymore. And I happened to know some of those graduates, and they had a very tough go of it. Again, the best way to advance with the fact that technology changes all the time is to understand the foundations. That's actually why we wrote this book. This is why we wrote You Are Not Stupid. It's because the foundations matter so much. So I'm going to read an excerpt from this, the very first chapter of You Are Not Stupid. We place our lives in the hands of technology every day. Technology is the application of knowledge with the purpose of solving problems or making life easier. The word comes from Greek techne, meaning skill with art. Computers, machines that store and deal with information, are technology. Modern cars, phones, airplanes, televisions, refrigerators, ovens, virtually all of the machines we use in our day-to-day life have computers in them. Have you done any of the following in the past 24 hours? Driven a car? Used a crosswalk or traffic light? Ridden in a modern elevator? Flown in an airplane? If so, you've trusted technology with your life. These machines are controlled to one degree or another by computers. Those computers were created by people. An error in the manufacture, building, creation, or control of those computers can factually put your life in danger. Therefore, wouldn't it be useful to understand this beast? As the saying goes, knowledge is power. In this case, a more appropriate phrase is knowledge is safety. second section below that reads, 2, knowledge is power. In summary, to quote the words of philosopher Francis Bacon, knowledge is power. And the third section under that says, knowledge, and this is critical, knowledge equals control. By increasing knowledge, you increase your ability to control and use something. Therefore, it is in your best interest to understand computers, tech, and AI fundamentals so that you are cause instead of effect. And honestly, I probably could have answered, I'm done reading that, by the way. I probably could have answered the whole question about whether or not AI is going to replace computers, or sorry, computer programmers with that point of view. You are cause over whether or not you prosper in your job. But that's a whole separate discussion for a whole separate workshop. As another note on this, we actually asked ChatGPT the prompt, will AI replace tech workers? Now, even though, again, we stress really strongly, it's not intelligent, there is no life there, it can't think, the output was kind of interesting. Again, we prompted, will AI replace tech workers? Here's the output. AI has the potential to automate certain tasks traditionally performed by tech workers, but it's unlikely to completely replace them. Instead, AI is more likely to augment the work of tech workers by automating repetitive tasks, freeing them up to focus on more creative and complex problems. Additionally, tech workers often bring critical thinking, problem-solving skills, and domain expertise that AI currently lacks. So while AI may change the nature of some tech jobs, it's unlikely to completely replace the need for human workers in the tech industry. I thought that was kind of cool. So here's a chance to answer your questions. Anything you want to know or talk about this, just pop it in the chat while I take a sip of water. Do me a favor, if you have noticed any articles over the last year or so predicting a major danger to the technology industry or to software development because of AI, if you've seen that in the media, give me a 1 in the chat if you've seen articles like that, or TV coverage, or yeah, there we go, 1. Yeah, there's another. Yeah, I started to notice them too. And then I started to, there's another one. Then I started to use ChatGPT and similar tools. I went, 1, this is awesome. They are awesome. 2, they're not going to replace me. Raymond has a question. Is AI a helpful tool to learn coding? This is something that we've had to put a lot of attention on and do experiments with and try with. So this is my answer now. And this is Jack and I, my co-founder, this is after, like I said, a decade of experience helping people to have successful long-term careers in technology. And I want to say this. If you can learn the fundamentals of how AI works and also learn the fundamentals behind technology and computer programming, you could make semi-intelligent use of an AI while you're trying to learn. But it wouldn't actually be that helpful. And I'll tell you why. The quality level of the results you get from an AI is utterly dependent on the quality level of the question you ask. And at your early stages of your technology learning journey, you just don't know the right questions to ask. You don't know the right context, the right constraints, the right desired output, the right technical terms. If you did know them really well, you wouldn't need to be doing any technology training. So it's a bit of a cart before the horse kind of thing. Now, what that does open up, Raymond, is the value of AI after you've learned your fundamentals of technology and coding. It's extremely valuable. But because of that point I made earlier, one needs to be able to learn to code to properly evaluate the output of an AI. And at that point, if you want to learn a new tool, AI is really helpful. Want to learn a new language, AI can be helpful. but not for the very beginning in our experience. I hope that answers that question for you, Evan. Corey's got a great idea. He says, could you see that, maybe junior developers get tasked with the more repetitive ChatGPT assisted tasks, then evolve into a mid-senior developer as you break out? Maybe a new route from entry to senior levels. Obviously it's still early days in this whole thing. But I tell you, I don't think it's going to play out that way. And here's why. In my experience, the people that are actually making effective use of ChatGPT are senior developers. People at the very beginning of their journey are using it, but they're still repeating mistakes that they would have made if they wrote their own code. There's so many things to look for. Security concerns, formatting your code to conform with a quality standard that the people at your company, have agreed upon. Making use of pre-built code libraries that generations of developers at your company have created so that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And when you use ChatGPT, it will not integrate those things. Over and over again, there's things that a junior level developer just won't know to make the AI do. And so I've seen that the most effective use of AI is coming from people with some deep experience in the industry. Now, everybody's an exception. There's some junior level developers that are just amazing. But that's the general pattern that I've seen. All right. Oh yeah, the article about RoboFab, the first humanoid robot factory is about to open. Yeah, this stuff is, and here's the thing. I'm going to nerd out for a second, okay? I'm going to nerd out for a second. I was around when the internet started. Shut up, I'm old. But there was an indescribable feeling of like unbridled enthusiasm, creativity, mystery, and wonder when they took billions of computers around the world and connected up this networked collection of documents from people all over the world, and suddenly you could access information from anywhere. It was stunning. And the pace of change in that area from 95, 96 into about 2004 or 5, unbelievably rapid change. And I lived through that. And I didn't think I'd see anything like that again. And this generative AI, this is like that all over again. It's actually really cool. But you need to know the fundamentals underlying all of it, or it'll swing past you, or you'll get caught up in it and not be able to control it and use it to be an effective tool in your life, both business and personal. All right, Nathan says, and then I think we'll take one more question. I've heard that there will still be a strong need for senior level developers in an AI world. Yeah, obviously I've been talking about that a little bit. How do you think junior developers will be able to get their start in the industry if the more basic junior level tasks can be done with AI? Here's the thing. It isn't the junior level tasks that can be done with AI. The tasks that most easily can be automated can be done with AI. But that isn't you don't give those to junior developers. Frankly, you just automate them. It's just that someone needs to create the automation. That's, by the way, I don't know if you know this, there's a whole sub-discipline within being a competent engineer in the software development world, which is being talented at creating automations, because they have to be built from scratch. But if you have some sort of a task that an engineer, a coder, could do manually, as soon as you identify, this is critical, as soon as you identify as a team that there's some sort of task that we're going to need to do multiple times, you're not going to go, oh, that would be a good job for Jane or Joe, the new developers on the team. That's not what you're going to do with it. Because you know as an engineer that that is a stupid use of a brilliant mind. In fact, you've had it repeated into you drilled into you over and over again, the mantra DRY, D-R-Y. Don't repeat yourself. It's built right into the fundamentals of how you write computer programs. And this is a subject that you'll learn more about on our free coding classes. There's only 5 elements of every computer program, and one of them is called a subprogram. It's a program within your program. And listen to the way it comes about. You're writing a program, and all of a sudden you find yourself writing the exact same tiny set of instructions that you just wrote a few minutes ago. You're like, wait a minute. I already wrote this exact series of like 5 instructions. And instantly you go, oh, well, then I need to make this into a subprogram. I need to take those 5 instructions, give them a name, call them George, call them, zip code lookup, whatever it is, right? And set them off to the side as what's called a subprogram. And then every time in your regular program, you need those instructions to happen, you just call on that subprogram. Hey, George, or yes, I'm weird. Hey, zip code lookup, can you please do your job? That's drilled into you from the moment you learn to make computer programs. So no, these automation things that technologists need to get done are not what junior developers do. All they're doing is the same thing that senior engineers do, but in a very tightly controlled space, very well defined. They're given exact guidelines on how to do it. They're not given the gnarly complex problems, but you're doing the same work that a senior engineer is going to do. Now, that was a very long answer, but I wanted to give you a lot of context on that, Nathan, because that was a very good question. You're completely right to ask it. Again, I want to repeat his question. He says, I have heard that there will still be a strong need for senior level developers in an AI world. How do you think junior developers will be able to get their start in the industry if the more basic junior level tasks can be done with AI? And they're not going to be. The entry level jobs are absolutely still there. AI is not affecting that one bit. What is changing is there's starting to be an expectation. It's just beginning, folks. There's starting to be an expectation in the hiring world that if you don't have some kind of AI experience a little bit, I don't know if I'm going to hire you. You see, it hasn't reached a full-blown like differentiator, like a tipping point of like the cloud. If you don't have some cloud skills and you're trying to get an engineering job today, I'm sorry, are you living under a rock? But I lived through this again back in the very late aughts. Aughts is so cumbersome to say, into the early 2010s, right? When cloud started to come around, Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, right? And I watched as, oh, that's that nifty little thing some people are experimenting with over there. And I'm not sure if it's got legs. I'm not sure if it's going to be around for a long time. And then by around 2013, 2014, you started to see this shift of, well, the hiring manager is asking, do you have any cloud experience? Even if it's like in your off time, have you done any projects with it on the side? And then you flash forward about 2016, and it's like, wait a minute, are you saying you don't have a cloud certificate? Huh, wow. So I've watched this happen over and over again. The same thing's going to happen with AI. You need to learn the fundamental principles underneath it and learn how to take it and make you able to do the work you would be doing anyway more effectively. Because all that's going to happen is you're going to be freed up to apply your wonderful mind to problems that are more worthwhile, that are more worthy of you. Now, I know I'm passionate about this, but I've been doing this for so long that I see, like, to take someone that has trained in the fundamentals of computer science and how computer programs work and can work with a team to create software solutions and can understand both the human factors involved and the deep, nerdy technical stuff, to take that and you're going to go through a list of 1,000 student records and make sure that they're properly capitalized? No, you're not going to do that. It's unworthy of you. So, yes, I'm passionate about it. But now we've solidly entered into the realm of Erik has an opinion about whether or not AI will replace software development jobs. I think you know where I lie on it. Okay. Now stick around because there's a free gift coming your way. I want to take a moment to talk about our coding boot camps, one of which, as you can see right here, is AI Developer. We have 12 of them, though, and these are online boot camps. Clearly, they cover a wide range of technology subjects from, of course, artificial intelligence, but also computer programming, website development, cybersecurity, design, data science, video game development, mobile app development, right? There's these focuses. I want to stress, because it's something we talked about this evening, every single one of them lays in those fundamentals, the foundation that I harped on so passionately about a few minutes ago. Every one of those programs. We do have more certification programs than any other coding bootcamp on earth. We worked really hard to get that to that. And every single one of these programs are, one, self-paced, yet instructor supported. Two, they're flexible. Students can set their own schedule and they can enroll 365 days a year. Three, the content in them is well-rounded and is in-depth. Four, the boot camps are affordable. They're priced under the national average, as I said. Five, the programs all include, let's see if Erik can learn how to operate Zoom. That's right. The programs all include both job placement training and job placement assistance. And most importantly, they're designed for absolute beginners. No technology knowledge or experience is required, so you don't have to be a nerd. You don't have to be me. But I do drop some pretty nerdy jokes in the curriculum, and you just have to learn to live with that. I also acknowledge the fundamental truth that the greatest movie in the history of movies is Princess Bride. You'll see that truth stated several times in the curriculum. Not even willing to argue about it. All right. We have, most recently, last year, because that's when the awards came out, and every single year before that, we consistently land on these major best coding bootcamp lists. We're very proud of it. These are not easy to achieve. They're picky. We remember when these lists started, and the rankings are very, very, very hard to get. And our average review rating across all major bootcamp review websites is 4.8 out of 5 stars, and that's based on student and graduate feedback. So, look, I've just talked about technology a lot. We've actually gone all the way from like the 1800s all the way up into modern times. Why would someone consider working in tech? Well, for one thing, it does have good work-life balance. And remote work is a very real possibility for many technology jobs nowadays. Also, it's a very creative industry. Even though you're working with machines, it's a person industry. It's human collaboration and communication. You can take a lot of personal pride in the work that you get done. And as I've talked about specifically, it is a stable industry. It is growing. It pays well. And if you apply yourself and work hard and keep learning, there's regular increases in pay. If you haven't done the research, by the way, look into the numbers on how well software developers and engineers and analysts and data science pros, how much they get paid. Pretty good. That said, there are barriers to our approach. There's barriers to doing a boot camp. It costs thousands for tuition. It's true. You're looking at 3 to 6 months of intensive training. It's going to cost. That said, we have tried to solve that by having multiple financing options, having an upfront discount. We have monthly payment options for people that have no credit or bad credit. The fact is, there's a tuition option for everyone in all financial conditions. But even more importantly now, I hope that I've communicated this well enough. We firmly believe that getting through a Tech Academy bootcamp is, thank you, Ayla, is an investment in yourself. You're literally making you and your mind more valuable in society by graduating. Another factor is the time involved. It takes some time. There's a required time investment. Some boot camps attempt to solve this challenge by grouping all of their students into a cohort. Everyone starts at the same time. They all move the material at the same time. They can control the time aspect of it. Some boot camps even make you study in person. What we solved is that, one, you can do the programs fully online. Two, you can choose your study schedule. And finally, most importantly, part-time studies allowed. We've solved being able to get through it on a part-time schedule, which means you can study concurrently to holding down another job or to going to school, that sort of thing. The last thing is, another barrier to getting through them is you've got to have some technical interest or ability. This is one where many of us have been fed a lie and think that you need a lot of technical interest and a lot of technical ability. Part of the reason this perception is out there is because some technology education materials that we've bumped into are just too hard. And not because the learner isn't intelligent enough, but because many educators assume too much prior knowledge on the part of the student. We don't do that. And because of that, at the school, at the Tech Academy, you don't have to be a nerd. to get through our programs. You don't need any technical background to enroll. So with all that said, I have some questions for you. Are you working a dead-end job? When you look at what the income ceiling looks like or the career progression in your industry looks like, is it just not going to meet what you want, what you need over the years? Perhaps you're even unemployed right now, or maybe you really want to work from home, and the industry you're in, that's just not possible. It's not even like physically possible to do the kind of job maybe that you're doing remotely. Or maybe you're in an industry that it might be possible, but they would never let you do that. And finally, is it really important you have more time with loved ones, your work-life balance? If any of these are true, you need to ask yourself, is it time for a career change? It can be a daunting question, but if there was some yeses to what I asked you, you should ask yourself, truly, is it time for a career change? And if it is, the Tech Academy is a solution. We're career change experts. This bridge in our logo is there for a reason. We set up to be a route into technology for everyone. You can walk across that bridge, regardless of where you're starting from, and you're not going to fall through the cracks. At this point, we have a decade of experience breaking people into tech. And most of our graduates, this is pretty cool. Most Tech Academy graduates make $30 an hour in their first job on average. That's the equivalent of $60,000 a year. That is pretty cool for a 3 to 6 month program. And this isn't just like isolated instances. We have over 1,000 graduates working in tech, working everywhere from small businesses to technology positions at big companies like Nike, Facebook, Uber, Disney, Epic Games. So as a reminder, we offer open enrollment, which means you can start anytime. So if any of this resonated with you, I encourage you to enroll now. It's real easy. You go right here. Regina will drop a link into the chat. You go to the Erik link, I call it, and you can find out more about the boot camps. There's no obligation, but it is really cool. After you fill out the form, there's a series of steps about the school, videos, articles, some optional steps. Maybe you want to book a call with one of our admissions personnel. The point is you can gather all the data you need to figure out what the right decision is for you. So after the event, I'd ask you to complete those steps. I'm going to stop for a moment, grab some water, and give anybody who wants to click on that and enroll a few minutes. We're moments away from the free gift, by the way, so you stick around. By the way, if you go to that link and you get a login screen asking for a username and password, all that means is you happen to have already set up an account at our website, and you can see some guidance at the bottom of the slide here to tell you how to log in. All right, so I want to talk about our referral program. Since our graduates really like us, referrals have been one of the top sources of enrollment for us for years. And for years, we've paid a 5% commission payment for any enrollment that comes from a referral. We pay that to the person that referred the person, right? The student. So in a moment, you're going to have an email address to use to get your free gift. When you send in for the free gift, you can include the name and contact information of any of your referrals that you'd like. We'll keep track of that, and we'll cut you a 5% commission check if they enroll. We also have 7 publications, of course, including You Are Not Stupid, but also 3 Learn Coding Basics in Hours books, a coding book for kids and young adults, a technology basics dictionary that explains like thousands of tech terms in simple, clear language, a project management handbook, and like I said, You Are Not Stupid. Now, I've already said a lot about what You Are Not Stupid is. It legitimately can change someone's life to learn all this information and have all the mystery from computers and technology removed from their understanding. It took a lot of work. I don't know of any other book like it. And yeah, you should get it. All right, so our free gift for the evening is our project management handbook. Jack and I wrote this to explain how software gets made. How do you make software? What's the process look like? Who are the people involved? What are the roles? How long does it take? How do you figure out how long it takes? How do you decide what to do? Like all these questions get answered in a very simple, clear, easy to understand way. So if you're in America, sorry, it's US only, but if you're in the US and you'll email us your name and your full mailing address, we will send you a copy of the book for your very own. So that's the email address to use. Regina just dropped into the chat. grab that and email us if you want this. Also, don't forget, if you have any referrals or if you have further questions you want to ask, go ahead and ask them in there. They get forwarded to me, any of those questions. And I do answer them. I like that. By the way, we occasionally get questions about, will this, meeting be recorded? Will it be available later on? And the answer is yes. No, Corey, you got to send us an email. I love ragging on Corey. Corey's also a dear friend who happens to be in the class right now. And he's also in the military, although not the Navy. So, all right. So let's talk about our Linktree. If you're not familiar with Linktree, it's a pretty cool service out there where in one place you can collect all of the different links associated with you or your business. And so if you go to that location, all the Tech Academy links are there, like links to our free educational YouTube video playlist, which is really cool. Our books and our dictionary are linked there. Upcoming meetups. If you want to know what the next class is and when it is, the link is right there. And then we even have all of our social media accounts. So please follow us on social media and invite your friends to future meetups. If you got something out of this, we do 2 classes every single week, a coding class and then some sort of technology education class. They're all free, and we love to have people come to them. So tell your friends about them. Now, obviously, I have said a lot about this book. You Are Not Stupid. If you'd like to win a copy of this, we give away a copy. Every week we have a drawing, and here's how it works. There's only 2 things you need to do. If you'll share a link to the next event on your social media, just go to the link. It's right there, right? Find a link to the next the next event and share it on social media and tag us. Just tag the Tech Academy. We'll see it. And we'll throw your little hat in the ring to be entered to win a copy of You Are Not Stupid. And we'll send it right to your house. You'll love it. Your neighbors and relatives who constantly come to you with technology questions, you'll learn to just give them this book and tell them to come back after they've read it. And they won't be asking you any questions anymore. That's true. We've had a lot of friends and relations that have used it that way, and they don't contact their technology-minded people anymore. They can figure it out themselves. So thank you for attending. I hope this was helpful, insightful. Again, I want to invite you to look at it yourself. Figure out your own point of view yourself about this stuff. But I hope it gave you a lot of data to think with. Reminder, if you filled out this form where the link is on the screen, right, then please follow up and do all the steps afterwards to learn about the school. And I'll see you at the next event.